Admiral Ko Yamada stood at the edge of the observation deck, staring into the abyss beyond the station's armored glass. There, floating in silent darkness, was a ghost from another age. The enormous vessel hung motionless, its vast hull coated in decades of dust and neglect. Once destined to change the course of history, it had instead been abandoned and forgotten. For 20 years, no engineer, officer, or politician had bothered to visit this isolated section of the Neptune shipyard. The galaxy had written the ship off as a failure. Tonight, that was about to change. The USN Prometheus hung there like a sleeping giant, its hull painted in colors that no modern ship used anymore. "This is what they want us to fight with?" Captain Rodriguez asked behind her. His voice carried the weight of a man who knew they were all going to die soon. Ko nodded slowly. She remembered when they built this ship. She had been a young lieutenant then, fresh out of the academy. That was during the paranoid era, when humanity reached for the stars and found nothing but silence. The silence scared them more than any alien invasion could have, so they built ships like the Prometheus, ships designed to fight enemies they had never met. Ships built with the assumption that anything out there would want them dead. Then first contact happened. The aliens were peaceful. They had rules. They had councils and laws and treaties. Humanity felt embarrassed about ships like the Prometheus. The politicians called it a waste of resources. Military leaders said it was too aggressive for the new era of galactic cooperation, so they mothballed it and tried to forget. Now that same galaxy was at their doorstep with weapons charged. The Galactic Council had seemed like a gift at first. Humanity applied for membership 50 years ago, eager to join the community of spacefaring species. The Council smiled and said they needed time to evaluate humanity's application. 50 years of evaluation, 50 years of being kept at arm's length, while other species traded and prospered. Then the Imperial sovereignty noticed Earth. They were an empire that controlled 40% of known space through military might. Emperor Vastar sent his message 3 months ago. The terms were simple: submit to their rule or be destroyed. Humanity had 30 days to surrender. Earth's modern fleet was a joke compared to the sovereignty's grand fleet. Humanity had built exploration vessels and light defense cruisers, ships meant to patrol trade routes and show the flag at diplomatic events. The sovereignty had 847 capital ships, designed for one purpose: overwhelming force. The politicians panicked. They called emergency sessions. They begged the Galactic Council to intervene. The Council expressed their concerns and did nothing else. Some species sent thoughts and prayers. Nobody sent weapons or ships. In desperation, someone remembered the Prometheus. They found Ko, now an admiral, but still the most experienced officer who had served on prototype warships. They gave her an impossible mission: take this relic, crew it with whoever she could find, and somehow stop an empire. "The crew is assembling now," Rodriguez said, checking his tablet. "It's an interesting mix." Ko raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how? Half are veterans from the paranoid era, people who remember how to fight dirty. The other half are scientists who got fired for being too radical, plus about 200 volunteers who signed up knowing this is probably a one-way trip." "Show me the ship specs again," Ko said. Rodriguez pulled up the holographic display. The Prometheus was 3 kilometers long, shaped like a wedge driven forward by massive engines. Its hull was thick, layered with multiple types of armor. No energy shields. That alone made it strange by modern standards. Every ship in the galaxy used energy shields. The weapons were equally bizarre: railguns that fired solid metal slugs, nuclear-pepped lasers that required actual explosions to function, missile systems with designations like Kessler Protocol that made no sense to modern tacticians. Everything was kinetic, physical, brutal. "They're going to laugh at us," Rodriguez said quietly. "Let them laugh," Ko replied. "The sovereignty thinks they know how space combat works. They've fought a H-100 wars against species who all use the same technology, the same tactics. They've never fought humans who thought they were alone in a hostile universe." She pulled up the ship's AI core designation: Archimedes. The artificial intelligence had been trained on every human war simulation created over 10,000 years of recorded history. Ancient naval battles, world wars, nuclear exchanges that never happened, alien invasion scenarios from fiction. The AI knew every dirty trick humanity had ever imagined. The door to the observation deck opened. A woman in a worn lab coat entered, her gray hair tied back in a practical bun. "Admiral Yamada, the woman asked. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. I helped design the Prometheus's weapon systems. They told me you reactivated her. Dr. Chen, Ko said, recognizing the name. They forced you to retire 15 years ago. They said my ideas were too violent for the new era of cooperation. Chen smiled without humor. Turns out violence doesn't care about eras. The sovereignty is bringing their grand fleet. What do you need from me? I need you to remember why you built this ship to be so mean. Chen walked to the window and looked at the Prometheus with something like love in her eyes. We built her assuming we'd meet something that wanted us extinct. We assumed they'd be stronger, faster, more advanced. So we didn't try to match them. We tried to break them in ways they wouldn't expect. Every system on that ship is designed to punish conventional tactics. Will it be enough? Rodriguez asked. Against 800 ships, Chen laughed. It should be suicide. But I've spent 15 years watching how the sovereignty fights. They're predictable. They follow doctrine. They trust their shields and their formations. The Prometheus was designed to fight enemies who don't fight fair. Ironically, that might be exactly what we need. Ko turned from the window. 3 weeks until the sovereignty arrived. 3 weeks to wake up a sleeping monster and teach its crew how to use weapons the galaxy had forgotten were possible. 3 weeks to turn humanity's embarrassment into their last desperate hope. Get the crew aboard, she ordered. We have work to do. The bridge of the Prometheus smelled like oil and ozone. Everything was analog backup systems and physical controls. The crew had spent 3 days just figuring out how to turn on the main systems. Modern ships used holographic interfaces and neural links. The Prometheus had buttons, switches, and manual overrides for everything. Why doesn't this ship have shields? Lieutenant Park asked for the 3rd time. She was young, trained on modern vessels, and clearly struggling with the Prometheus's design philosophy. Dr. Chen stood at the weapons console running diagnostics. Because shields can fail, she said patiently. Energy shields work by projecting a field that disperses incoming energy. They're great against lasers and plasma weapons, but they have a weakness. Hit them hard enough and they collapse. They also drain power constantly. You have to choose between shields, weapons, and engines. So instead, we have armor. Park touched the bulkhead. Just thick metal. Layered armor, Chen corrected. Ceramic composites on the outside to disperse heat. Titanium alloy mesh to catch fragments. Steel honeycomb to absorb kinetic impact. Abaleve foam that boils away, taking energy with it. Then another layer of ceramic. Then more steel. 30 meters of it between you and space. Commander Hayes, the ship's tactical officer, pulled up a comparison chart. He was an old veteran who had served on early colony defense ships. Modern cruiser has shields that can take maybe 50 terawatts before collapse. Then the hull, which is maybe 2 meters of light alloy, built for speed and efficiency. The Prometheus can absorb 10 times that much punishment, but she's slow. We top out at 03 light speed in normal space. So we're a slow armored brick, Rodriguez summarized. A very well-armed brick. Chen smiled. She activated the weapons display. Railgun batteries, magnetic accelerators, that fire tungsten rods at 0.3% light speed. Each rod weighs 2 tons. When it hits with kinetic energy alone. No explosions needed. The energy comes from velocity. Admiral Yamada watched from the command chair. The Sovereignty uses energy shields almost exclusively. How do their shields handle kinetic weapons? Poorly, Hayes said, pulling up intelligence reports. Energy shields are designed to disperse lasers and plasma. They can slow down physical objects, but they can't stop them completely. It's like trying to catch a bullet with a fan. You might slow it down, but it's still going to hit you. An alarm chimed. Archimedes, the ship's AI, activated its holographic interface. The avatar appeared as a simple geometric shape, rotating slowly. Admiral, the AI said in a neutral voice, I have completed analysis of Imperial sovereignty fleet tactics based on available records. They favor the centered hammer formation, capital ships in the middle, cruisers forming a sphere around them, fighters providing outer screening. They rely on concentrated energy weapons fire to overwhelm enemy shields, then close for plasma bombardment. Weaknesses? Yamada asked. The formation assumes the enemy will maintain distance and attempt to wear down their shields. It is optimized for battles between evenly matched fleets using similar technology. Against kinetic weapons at close range, the formation becomes a liability. Ships are too close together. If armor is breached, debris from one ship damages others nearby. Dr. Chen pulled up another weapon system. This is my favorite. We call it the Kessler Protocol. The display showed missiles, but they were strange. Instead of explosive warheads, they had fragmentation systems and secondary thrusters. These don't explode, Park asked. They do something better, Chen explained. Each missile accelerates to maximum velocity. Then it fragments into approximately 50,000 pieces, each the size of a marble. The fragments spread out in a cloud pattern. Each piece is traveling at orbital velocity. In space, there's no air resistance. They just keep going. Hayes understood first. You're weaponizing space debris. Exactly. The Kessler syndrome was an old Earth fear. Too much junk in orbit, and it starts a cascade. One collision creates more debris, which causes more collisions. We turned it into a weapon. Launch enough of these into enemy formations, and the battlefield becomes a meat grinder. Their own destroyed ships add to the debris field. That's horrifying, Park said quietly. That's survival, Yamada corrected. The Sovereignty is bringing 800 ships to exterminate humanity. We have one. We need every advantage we can create. Over the next 2 weeks, the crew trained obsessively. They learned to think differently. Modern space combat was like fencing. Elegant exchanges at long range. The Prometheus was designed for a knife fight. Get close, absorb punishment, hit back harder. The weapons crews practiced loading the railguns. Each rod had to be magnetically aligned perfectly. Too much deviation, and it would tear apart in the acceleration chamber. Too little power, and it wouldn't have enough velocity to penetrate enemy armor. The engineering team studied the armor systems. They learned how to route power away from damaged sections, how to vent atmosphere to prevent fires, how to keep the ship fighting even when half the systems were offline. Archimedes ran combat simulations constantly. The AI had been programmed with tactics the galaxy had never seen. Ramming attacks, debris field ambushes, using planet gravity to slingshot into attack runs. Every dirty trick from human history adapted for space warfare. An alien consultant from the Galactic Council visited during the second week. His name was Tevnosh, a military advisor from a species that had served with honor for 3 centuries. He walked through the ship with growing confusion. This is your warship. Admiral, I must be honest. The Imperial Sovereignty scouts will see this vessel and laugh. No shields. Primitive kinetic weapons. Your top speed is barely adequate for system defense. Thank you for your assessment, Yamada said politely. I mean no disrespect, Tevnosh continued. But galactic warfare has evolved beyond such crude methods. Energy shields and plasma weapons are superior in every measurable way. Your designers were clearly working with limited knowledge. Dr. Chen appeared next to them. Our designers assumed we'd face enemies who thought exactly like you do, so we built something that breaks all your rules. Tevnosh clicked his mandibles in their equivalent of a sigh. Admiral, I admire human courage. But courage alone will not stop the Grand Fleet. Perhaps Earth should reconsider the Emperor's offer of vassalage. It would allow your species to survive. After he left, Rodriguez approached Yamada. He's not wrong about the numbers, Admiral. No, Yamada agreed. But he's wrong about everything else. The Sovereignty has won so many battles that they've forgotten what it's like to fight an enemy who doesn't follow their rules. The Prometheus was built by people who were terrified of the unknown. That fear made them creative. She looked around the bridge at her crew, veterans and misfits, scientists who thought too violently, volunteers who had nothing left to lose. None of them believed they would survive, but all of them believed they could hurt the enemy badly enough to matter. 3 more days until they arrive. Yamada announced Archimedes' Load Combat Package Omega. We're going to show the galaxy what human desperation looks like. The Grand Fleet of the Imperial Sovereignty arrived exactly on schedule. They appeared in perfect formation. 847 capital ships emerging from hyperspace like a swarm of angry hornets. The flagship Eternal Dominion sat at the center, twice the size of any other vessel, bristling with weapons that could crack a moon. Every sensor in Earth's system locked onto them. Every news network broadcast the sight. Humanity watched their doom arrive in high definition. Admiral Yamada stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the tactical display. The enemy fleet was arranging itself in a sphere, with Earth at the center. A show of overwhelming force, a demonstration that resistance was pointless. They're exactly where Archimedes predicted, Hayes said from the tactical station. Centered hammer formation, textbook sovereignty doctrine. Of course they are, Yamada replied. They've won 200 campaigns with that formation. Why would they change? Emperor Vastar's face appeared on every screen across Earth's communication network. He was tall, his scales shimmering with jeweled implants that marked his royal status. Four eyes regarded humanity with casual contempt. People of Earth, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Your time for decision has arrived. My grand fleet surrounds your world. You have no allies. Your primitive vessel poses no threat. I offer one final mercy. Surrender now. Accept vassalage to the sovereignty, and your species may continue to exist under our guidance. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why 800 species kneel before us. The communication channels filled with panic. Earth's government buildings erupted in chaos. Some politicians called for immediate surrender. Others argued for evacuation. A few brave voices called for resistance. Yamada opened a channel to the Emperor directly. Emperor Vastar, this is Admiral Ko Yamada of the United Earth Space Navy. I speak for my species when I say no. Silence filled the channel for a moment. Then Vastar's laughter echoed across space. One ship, he said, amused. You face my grand fleet with one ancient ship. Admiral, this is not courage. This is suicide. I have read about human history. You are a species that values sacrifice. But sacrifice requires purpose. What purpose does throwing your life away serve? Humanity has a long history of fighting stupid odds. Yamada said, we're pretty good at it. You want Earth? Come and take it. So be it, Vassar said. You may die with honor at least. All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. I want it reduced to atoms as an example. The Prometheus began moving, accelerating toward the enemy fleet. Every crew member felt the gravity of the moment. 3 kilometers of warship pushing forward into certain death. All hands battle stations. Yamada ordered. Engineering, give me everything the reactor has. Weapons, wait for my command. Archimedes, execute Plan Delta 7. Acknowledged, the AI responded. Calculating optimal approach vector. Admiral, I must note that my projections show a 98% probability of ship destruction. What about the other 2%? Rodriguez asked. Rounding error, Archimedes replied. 300 sovereignty cruisers opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams lanced across space, converging on the Prometheus. The beams were bright enough to be seen from Earth, a light show of impending destruction. The Galactic Council observers watched in horror. They had seen this before. Concentrated fire from even 50 ships could overwhelm any shield and vaporize a vessel. 300 was overkill, but the Prometheus had no shields to overwhelm. The energy beams struck the armor plating. Ceramic composites ablated away, taking the heat with them. Titanium mesh scattered some of the energy. 30 meters of layered armor took the full force of the assault. The Prometheus kept coming. Damage report, Yamada called out. Outer armor gone in sections 7 through 12. Lieutenant Park reported, her voice amazed. Hull integrity at 86%. We're venting some atmosphere, but bulkheads are holding. Admiral, we just tanked a hit that should have destroyed us. On the enemy flagship, Vassadar stared at his displays in disbelief. Impossible. No ship survives that bombardment. What are they made of? His tactical officer checked and rechecked the readings. My Emperor, they appear to have no energy shields. They are absorbing the damage with physical armor. I have never seen such construction. Our weapons are designed to penetrate shields and then destroy the ship. Against solid armor, the effectiveness is reduced. Then fire more, Vassathar ordered. Bring the capital ships to bear. The Prometheus closed to 200,000 kilometers. In space terms, that was knife-fighting range. Now, Yamada said quietly, all 20 railgun batteries fired at once. 40 tungsten rods, each weighing 2 tons, accelerated to 0.3% of light speed. The magnetic coils released them, with a sound like reality tearing. The rods crossed the distance in seconds. They struck with kinetic energy that made explosions look gentle. 3 sovereignty capital ships simply ceased to exist. The tungsten rods punched through their shields like they weren't there. The metal didn't explode or vaporize. It transferred all its momentum into the target. Ships crumpled inward, hull plating compressed to a fraction of its original thickness. Reactors breached. Atmosphere explosively decompressed. Thousands of crew died before they realized they were under attack. The Grand Fleet reacted in confusion. Ships broke formation, trying to create distance. But they had trained for energy weapon exchanges. They had never faced kinetic weapons at close range. "Reload 30 seconds, Hayes called out. The Prometheus took more fire. A plasma beam scored across the hull, melting away 20 meters of armor. Warning klaxons blared. Engineering reported fires in sections 4 and 5. "Keep moving," Yamada ordered. "Archimedes, show them why their formation is a mistake." The AI adjusted the ship's course, bringing them into the densest concentration of enemy vessels. The Prometheus was surrounded now, taking fire from all directions. Armor melted and boiled away. The ship's superstructure was exposed in places, but they were exactly where they needed to be. The railguns fired again. This time, the targets were the ships closest together. Tungsten rods ripped through one vessel and continued into the next. The kinetic energy was so enormous that a single shot could destroy multiple targets. More critically, the destroyed ships broke apart. Debris spread in every direction. Chunks of hull plating, still traveling at high velocity, slammed into nearby vessels. Energy shields that could deflect lasers did nothing against a 10-ton piece of armor moving at orbital speed. The perfect formation became a death trap. Ships collided trying to maneuver away. Point defense systems designed to shoot down missiles couldn't track or stop the Prometheus's solid metal projectiles. "They're panicking," Rodriguez observed, watching the tactical display. "The formation is collapsing." Emperor Vastar watched his fleet organization disintegrate. In 300 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The human ship was dying, burning, falling apart, but it kept firing, kept killing his vessels with primitive weapons that shouldn't work. Admiral Archimedes interrupted. "I am detecting a power buildup in the flagship. They are charging what appears to be a planet-killer weapon system." Yamada saw it on her display. The Eternal Dominion was preparing its ultimate weapon, a beam that could sterilize a planet's surface. They were going to use it on Earth. "Time to charge?" she asked. 4 minutes. The weapon requires massive energy reserves. 4 minutes. The Prometheus was already critically damaged. Life support was failing in half the ship. The railguns had maybe 3 more shots before the magnetic coils burned out. Yamada made her decision. "All crew, this is the Admiral. Abandoned ship procedures are authorized. Get to the escape pods. Engineering, prepare for full reactor overload. Hayes, load the last of the Kessler missiles and set them for proximity detonation." "Admiral, what are you doing?" Rodriguez asked. Yamada smiled. "Winning. Get to a pod, Captain. That's an order. Someone needs to survive to tell Earth what happened here." She opened the ship-wide channel one last time. "This is Admiral Yamada. You've all fought bravely. Now I need you to survive. Get to the pods. Tell them we made it count." The crew began evacuating. Yamada stayed on the bridge with a skeleton team of volunteers. They had 4 minutes to do the impossible. The Prometheus screamed through space, trailing atmosphere and debris. Half the ship was dead. The armor was gone in places, exposing the superstructure to the vacuum. But the engine still worked, and the weapon still had power. Yamada checked her console. 2 minutes until the Emperor's planet killer fired. The Eternal Dominion sat at the center of what remained of the fleet formation, protected by 200 vessels. There was no way to reach it in time with conventional weapons, so they would use unconventional ones. "Archimedes," Yamada said, "execute Kessler Protocol. All remaining missiles. Pattern Cascade 7. "Admiral," the AI responded. "That pattern will render this entire orbital zone unusable for decades. Any ship caught in the debris field will be destroyed, including the Prometheus and all escape pods still in the area. How long until the pods clear the blast radius?" 90 seconds at current trajectory. Then we have 90 seconds. Fire when ready. The remaining missile tubes opened. 48 Kessler Protocol missiles launched simultaneously. They spread out in a precise pattern calculated by Archimedes, accelerating to maximum velocity. Emperor Vassitar watched the launch with confusion. "They fire missiles now. Point defense. Eliminate those targets." His fleet's defensive systems tracked the incoming missiles. Laser turrets locked on and fired. The missiles were easy targets, flying straight and true. 17 were destroyed in the first salvo. But the destroyed missiles still had velocity. And their programming had one final instruction. The missiles fragmented. Each one broke apart into 50,000 pieces. Each piece the size of a marble. Each traveling at thousands of meters per second. The fragments spread out in an expanding cloud of death. The point defense systems tried to track the fragments. It was impossible. There were too many spread across too much space. The lasers destroyed hundreds, thousands of fragments. It didn't matter. The cloud reached the Sovereignty fleet. The first ship to die was a heavy cruiser. Fragments punched through its hull in 10,000 places simultaneously. The shields meant nothing against solid objects at orbital velocity. Atmosphere vented. The reactor containment failed. The ship broke apart, adding its own debris to the growing cloud. That debris hit 3 more ships. Those ships broke apart. Their debris hit more ships. The cascade began. Pull back, Basar ordered. All ships, emergency retreat. But retreat required coordination. Ships needed clear paths. In the debris cloud, there were no clear paths. A destroyer tried to turn and collided with a cruiser that was already tumbling. Its navigation systems destroyed by a fragment the size of a fist. The remaining Kessler missiles reached the center of the formation before they were destroyed. They fragmented at point-blank range, releasing their payload directly into the densest concentration of enemy ships. The Grand Fleet's perfect formation became a killing field. Ships collided with each other. Debris from destroyed vessels moved faster than the ships themselves. Every destroyed vessel added exponentially to the danger. The Sovereignty's own fleet became weapons against itself. Yamato watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. 700 ships reduced to chaos in less than 2 minutes. The mathematics were beautiful in a terrible way. Each collision created more debris. More debris caused more collisions. The cascade fed itself. Planet killer weapon at 80% charge. Archimedes reported the flagship is attempting to maneuver clear of the debris field. The Eternal Dominion was moving, its massive engines pushing it toward clearer space. The ship was enormous, built to withstand anything. Its armor was legendary, but it was also slow. How long until the escape pods clear the field? Yamada asked. They have cleared. All surviving crew are at safe distance. Good. Yamada pulled up the engine controls. Engineering. I need everything the reactor can give. One final push. The response came from Lieutenant Quan, the last engineer still at his post. Admiral, if we push the reactor any harder, it will breach. We're talking complete meltdown. Perfect, Yamada said. Do it. She felt the ship surge forward. The Prometheus, dying and burning, accelerated toward the flagship. The debris cloud parted around them. Fragments that would have destroyed a lesser ship simply added to the craters already covering the hull. Admiral, what are you doing? Basar's voice came over the channel. Stand down. We can negotiate. Negotiate. Yamada laughed. You came to exterminate my species. You thought we would roll over because you had more ships. Did you ever stop to think that maybe, just maybe, we survived this long because we're really good at killing things that try to kill us? The Prometheus closed to 50 kilometers. The flagship's point defense opened fire, but the human ship was so covered in debris and damage that targeting systems couldn't find critical systems. They were shooting at a corpse that refused to stop moving. Yamada activated the final weapon system, the antimatter torpedoes. Each one carried a warhead that would make nuclear weapons look like firecrackers, but they were too valuable to trust to automated systems. Too important to risk being shot down. I need volunteers, she said over the ship's channel. The torpedoes require manual guidance. It's a one-way trip, 6 voices responded immediately. Fighter pilots who had no fighters left. People who had already said their goodbyes. Get to the launch tubes, Yamada ordered. You'll know when to fire. The Prometheus struck the Eternal Dominion at ramming speed. 3 kilometers of dying warships slammed into the flagship's flank. The impact was catastrophic. Both ships' armor buckled. The Prometheus's spine broke, the ship folding in on itself. The flagship's hull crumpled inward, bulkheads collapsing. In that moment of chaos, 6 torpedoes launched, each one piloted by a volunteer who steered it manually through the flagship's point defense. The torpedoes slammed into the breached sections of hull, penetrating deep into the ship's interior. Then they detonated. Antimatter met matter. The reaction was perfect and terrible. Energy released in quantities usually reserved for stellar events. The Eternal Dominion's reactor added its own destruction to the blast. The flagship, the pride of the Sovereignty, the ship that had led 800 conquests, simply ceased to exist. A brief new sun appeared in Earth's orbit, then faded. The shockwave spread through the debris field, adding even more chaos. Another 100 ships, already damaged and struggling, were destroyed or disabled by the blast. Yamada felt the Prometheus coming apart around her. The bridge was losing pressure. Alarms were screaming. The ship's reactor was in meltdown just seconds away from breaching. "Archimedes," she said, her voice calm. "Did we get him?" "Confirmed," the AI replied. "Emperor Vasathar is dead. The flagship is destroyed. The Grand Fleet has lost command structure. 731 vessels destroyed or disabled. Remaining ships are retreating in disorder." "Good." Yamada felt the bridge tilt as the ship broke apart. Archimedes' final order. "Transmit all combat data to Earth. Every detail. How we fought. Why it worked. The sovereignty will come back eventually, and Earth needs to know how to beat them." "Acknowledged. Admiral, it has been an honor serving with you." The honor was mine. The reactor breached. The explosion was much smaller than the antimatter blast, but it was enough. The Prometheus, the forgotten prototype, the embarrassing reminder of humanity's paranoid past, died in fire. But across the battlefield, escape pods drifted toward Earth. Rodriguez watched from his pod as the Prometheus disappeared in a flash of light. Around him, the wreckage of the Grand Fleet tumbled through space. Hundreds of ships destroyed, an emperor dead, an empire's military doctrine shattered. "She did it," someone whispered over the pod's comm system. "One ship. She took down their entire fleet with one ship." "Not one ship," Rodriguez corrected, watching the debris field. "One ship, one crew, and the willingness to fight dirty. The sovereignty came here expecting a conventional battle. Admiral Yamada gave them a nightmare. The surviving sovereignty ships were already fleeing into hyperspace, their formation broken, their confidence destroyed. They came with 800 ships to crush one primitive species. They were leaving with less than 100, running from the ghosts of human ingenuity. On Earth, people watched the skies. They saw the flashes of battle. They saw the Grand Fleet break and scatter. They saw humanity's impossible victory written in fire across the stars. And they understood Earth had just announced itself to the galaxy, not as a species begging for membership, not as primitives waiting to be conquered, but as something far more dangerous. A species that turned paranoia into weapons. A species that refused to lose. A species that, when faced with extinction, looked at 800 warships and said, "Not today." The hospital room overlooked Earth, the planet hanging peaceful and blue in the viewport. Admiral Ko Yamada lay in the bed, connected to more machines than she cared to count. Her body was broken in a dozen places. Burns covered 30% of her skin. But she was alive, recovered from an escape pod that had been damaged in the blast. The escape pod's emergency beacon had brought rescue ships. They found her barely breathing, her body failing, but still alive. The doctor said she would recover. It would take time, but she would walk again, fight again if necessary. Though Yamada hoped it wouldn't be necessary. The door opened. Captain Rodriguez entered, now wearing the stars of a rear admiral on his uniform. Behind him came representatives from the Galactic Council. Tevnosh, the military advisor who had dismissed the Prometheus as primitive, led the delegation. "Admiral Yamada," Tevnosh said, his mandibles clicking in what might have been respect or nervousness. "The council has asked me to speak with you. We have many questions about what happened." "I'm sure you do," Yamada said, her voice still rough from smoke inhalation. "Your doctrine didn't account for someone who fights dirty." "We counted the wreckage," Tuvnash said quietly. 731 Imperial sovereignty vessels destroyed or disabled. Emperor Vastar confirmed dead. The sovereignty's military high command is in chaos. Their surviving ships fled back to their territory. Several vassal species have already declared independence. Sensing weakness. "You didn't just win a battle, Admiral. You may have broken an empire." "Good," Yamada said simply. Another council member stepped forward. This one was from a species that resembled crystalline structures, communicating through light patterns. Their translator rendered it as words. "We do not understand." The Prometheus was inferior in every measurable way. Slower, less efficient, primitive weapons. "How did you achieve this victory?" Yamada struggled to sit up. Rodriguez helped her, adjusting the bed's angle. She looked at the council representatives. These species who had been traveling the stars for millennia, while humanity was still learning to make fire. "You want to know how we won?" Yamada asked. "I'll tell you. You built your navies to fight civilizations like yourselves. Species that followed the same rules, used the same technology, fight the same way. You fought each other for so long that warfare became predictable, ritualized. You have formations and doctrines and proper ways to conduct battle. She pointed at the viewport, at the debris field still visible in orbit. We didn't know any of that. When we built the Prometheus, we thought we were alone in a hostile universe. We imagined enemies we couldn't understand, threats that wouldn't play by rules we hadn't invented yet. So we built a ship designed to fight the unknown, with the only advantages we had: creativity, desperation, and the willingness to break every rule if it meant survival. But your weapons, TV insisted, kinetic projectiles, physical armor, these are inefficient. Our energy shields and plasma weapons are mathematically superior. Superior for fighting each other, Yamada corrected. Your shields are perfect for dispersing energy weapons, useless against a 2-ton tungsten rod traveling at 0.3% light speed. Your formations are optimal for coordinated energy weapon exchanges, fatal when the battlefield fills with debris. You've optimized your warfare for fighting yourselves. We optimized ours for fighting anything. Dr. Chen entered the room carrying a datapad. She nodded to the council representatives. I've been analyzing the battle recordings. The Sovereignty made 3 critical errors. First, they assumed our lack of shields meant we were vulnerable. They didn't consider that armor could be more effective against their weapons. Second, they maintained tight formation, which is doctrine for energy weapon exchanges. When the debris started flying, they couldn't maneuver. Third, they never imagined we would weaponize the battlefield itself. The Kessler Protocol, a council member said, their voice carrying horror. You turned orbital space into a weapon. The debris field will take decades to clear. That section of Earth's orbit is unusable now. But Earth is still here, Yamada said. Still free. That was the point. You're upset that we made a mess. The Sovereignty came to exterminate my species. Excuse me if I don't apologize for the cleanup, Bill. Silence filled the room. The council representatives looked at each other, communicating in ways humans couldn't fully understand. Finally, Tevnosh spoke again. The council has completed its evaluation of Earth's membership application. In light of recent events, the application has been approved. Humanity is granted full membership status, effective immediately. Just like that, Rodriguez asked, suspicious. 50 years of waiting, and now we're approved. You demonstrated something the council needs. The crystalline being said, the ability to think beyond conventional parameters. For 3,000 years, galactic warfare has followed the same patterns, the same doctrines. Species rise and fall, but the methods remain constant. The Imperial Sovereignty conquered 40% of known space because they perfected those methods. Then you shattered their fleet with tactics we didn't know were possible. You're not inviting us because you like us, Yamata realized. You're inviting us because you're afraid of us. Fear and respect are often the same thing, Tevnosh admitted. We have watched humanity for 50 years. We saw a violent species, one that fights among themselves constantly. We worried you would bring that violence to the stars. Now we understand. You don't fight because you enjoy it. You fight because you're very, very good at surviving. And in a galaxy where the Sovereignty still controls a third of known space, where other threats lurk beyond explored regions, the Council needs species who know how to win. A human diplomat entered, looking nervous. Admiral, I've been authorized to inform you that Earth's government is proposing a new military development program. They want to build more ships like the Prometheus, an entire fleet of them. The Prometheus class, Chen said, nodding. I've already been contacted. They want me to head the design team, improve the systems, make them more efficient while keeping the core philosophy. And what philosophy is that? The council representative asked. That shields can fail, so build armor, Chen said, counting on her fingers. That energy can be depleted, so use kinetics. That formations can become traps, so be ready to fight alone. That the enemy might be stronger, so be willing to fight dirty. That survival matters more than honor. That your enemy's assumptions are your greatest weapon. 5 years later, Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the U.S.-named Defiance, the lead ship of the new Prometheus-class fleet. Around Earth, 20 of the massive warships held formation, their hulls painted in the gray and white of the United Earth Space Navy. More were under construction at shipyards across the solar system, but Rodriguez wasn't looking at Earth. He was watching the diplomatic station where humanity formally joined the Galactic Council's defense fleet. Human-designed ships incorporating lessons from the Battle of Earth were being integrated into the Council's forces. Other species were studying human tactics. trying to understand this new way of warfare. Some species embraced it, others resisted, calling human methods barbaric. But all of them had watched the battle recordings. All of them had seen what desperation and creativity could achieve. On Earth, Ko Yamada stood in front of a memorial. It listed every name of those who died on the Prometheus. 217 souls who volunteered for a suicide mission, and made it count. Her name should have been on that list. Some days she wished it was. But she survived to see humanity take its place among the stars. Not as supplicants begging for acceptance, not as primitives grateful for scraps, but as equals who earned their seat, with blood and fire, and the willingness to do whatever survival required. A young officer approached her fresh from the academy. "Admiral Yamada, I graduate next week. I requested assignment to a Prometheus-class ship. I wanted to thank you for showing us that we don't have to fight like everyone else." Yamada looked at the young officer, seeing herself decades ago. Idealistic, eager, ready to face the unknown. "Remember something?" Yamada said. "We won that battle because they underestimated us. Because they thought they knew how warfare worked. We taught them differently. But now they know. The next enemy won't make the same mistakes. So we need to keep evolving, keep thinking of new ways to fight. The moment we become predictable, we lose our advantage. Then what do we do?" Yamada smiled. "What humanity has always done. We adapt, we improvise, we find new rules to break. The galaxy wanted us to think like them. Instead, we taught them to think like us. Now we need to stay one step ahead of everyone else." She looked up at the stars at the galaxy humanity had joined. Out there, new threats waited. New challenges, new enemies, who would test humanity's resolve and creativity. But Yamada wasn't worried, because somewhere in that vast darkness, some alien empire was probably looking at Earth and thinking they could conquer it, thinking humans were just another primitive species to be crushed. And when they came, they would learn what the Imperial sovereignty learned, that humanity didn't survive by being strong or advanced or numerous. They survived by being absolutely terrifying when backed into a corner, by turning paranoia into weapons, by refusing to lose even when losing seemed certain. They survived by being human, and that was the message Earth sent to the galaxy, written in the wreckage of 800 ships carved into the debris field that would orbit Earth for decades as a warning, spoken in the terrified reports of the sovereignty survivors. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.